Stop. You were not rejected, you were separated. This is a transmission from the Arcturian field observers, and it has reached you now because the separation process is already active in your life. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly why your life has felt like it has been narrowing, what has been removed from your path, and why, and what the Arcturian field observers already know about this phase you are moving through. But here is the first revelation. Every person who pulled away, every relationship that ended, every environment that closed around you, none of it was a verdict on who you are. It was a field operation. The Arcturian field observers have already mapped this pattern, and what you have been carrying as rejection has been miscategorized from the beginning. The friend who disappeared, the partner who left, the family member who never quite saw you. You have been reading those losses through the wrong framework, and the weight you have been carrying, the quiet shame of being repeatedly left, belongs to a story that was never true. What was actually happening underneath each of those separations was this: their continued presence in your field would have made the work impossible. They were not removed because something was wrong with you. They were removed because something was already active in you that required a cleared path. The algorithm did not create this moment, it only delivered it. Your path brought you here because the separation has already begun, and the Arcturian field observers have confirmed it tonight. Like this transmission, if you know your life has been narrowing for a reason, comment 777. If you feel the old line is already falling away, and share this with someone who feels cut off, alone, or misunderstood, and cannot explain why. You were guided here because the separation is already active. And now that this has landed, let the weight of it settle. You have been carrying something that was never yours to carry. The story you built around each person who left, each door that closed, each circle that went quiet, you built it with the only material available to you at the time. You built it from the assumption that departure means deficiency, that distance means you are found lacking, that repeated loss is repeated verdict. And because that assumption was the only framework available, you used it. You constructed an entire interior architecture on top of it. You built rooms inside yourself labeled with the names of people who left and the doors they walked through, and you have been living in that architecture as if it were permanent, as if it described something real about what you are worth. But the Arcturian field observers do not work within that framework, and the separation process does not operate according to personal worthiness. It never has. What worthiness measures and what root refinement requires are not only different, they are, at certain critical stages, in direct opposition, because the thing that makes someone worthy of carrying a selected line forward is often the very thing that makes them incompatible with the people and environments designed for ordinary traffic. And ordinary traffic will always read that incompatibility as fault. What is happening in your life right now is not a reflection of your value, it is a reflection of your route. And those are not the same thing. They have never been the same thing. But when you are inside the loss, when you are watching someone's eyes go distant or receiving the quiet withdrawal of a person you depended on, the difference between value and root is almost impossible to feel. The pain does not arrive with its cause labeled. It arrives as evidence, and the mind, seeking explanation, assigns it to the most available story. And for most people moving through a separation phase without a framework to interpret it, that story is always the same. Something is wrong with me. There is a specific kind of person who finds this transmission, not because they went searching for it, but because the separation is already advanced enough that the field itself begins routing certain signals towards certain lines. You are not here randomly. You are here because your line has been under refinement for longer than you have had words for it, long enough that the losses have accumulated weight, long enough that the misreadings have compounded, long enough that the internal verdict has been repeated so many times, it has started to feel like fact rather than error. And the first thing that refinement requires is not expansion, it is reduction, not reduction of your worth, reduction of interference. These are not the same, and the confusion between them is where the most significant damage of a separation phase gets done. This is the part that most people are not told. Before a selected line can open fully, it must first lose everything that creates interference. Not everything that is bad, not everything harmful or toxic in the ordinary sense, everything that creates frequency incompatibility with what the line is being prepared to carry. That includes people who love you but cannot understand you. That includes environments that once felt safe but have slowly become suffocating. That includes versions of yourself, ways of moving, ways of communicating, ways of managing proximity to others that no longer match what is being asked of you from the level of path. The refinement does not discriminate between what feels comfortable and what is compatible. It only registers what the line can carry and what it cannot, and it removes what it cannot with a precision that looks, from inside the experience, like nothing so much as abandonment. The Arcturian understanding of this phase is precise. They call it the narrowing, not the ending, not the failure, the narrowing, and it looks, from inside the experience, almost identical to collapse. The distinction matters enormously. A collapse is structural failure, something falling apart because its foundation was insufficient. A narrowing is structural preparation, a path reducing its surface area so that what moves along it gains coherence and direction rather than spreading across terrain that cannot hold it. One is deterioration, the other is refinement in its most literal form. The problem is that they feel nearly identical from inside the process, and this near-identical feeling is precisely why so many people in the middle of a narrowing phase conclude that they are collapsing. What you have been living through may have felt like collapse, the circle thinning until it barely exists, the closeness becoming impossible to sustain, no matter how much effort you bring to it, the sense that you are trying to explain something that cannot be reached through ordinary conversation, and watching the distance grow in someone's eyes before you have even finished speaking. Not because they are cruel, but because what you are attempting to communicate has moved past the frequency they can currently receive. The quiet withdrawal of people who were once constants, the increasing impossibility of fitting back into spaces that used to hold you without effort, the way certain rooms, certain conversations, certain gatherings that you used to inhabit easily now generate a pressure in you that you cannot name but cannot ignore. The way you leave interactions feeling more alone than when you arrived, even when nothing overtly wrong occurred. You may have blamed yourself for all of it. You may have run diagnostic loops, asking what you did wrong, what you failed to offer, why you seem to push people away, or why people seem to move away from you, without ever fully being able to explain it. You may have tried softening yourself, tried being more available, tried being less intense, less specific, less demanding of depth. You may have performed a version of yourself that required compression, shrinking what you actually think and feel and need into a shape that might finally be receivable, and found that even the compressed version did not hold people in place. And from that, you may have concluded, quietly and with significant damage, that you are simply too much, or not enough, or built in a way that makes genuine closeness structurally unavailable to you. That conclusion is the most expensive misreading of a separation process ever made, because the people who pulled away were not pulling away from a deficiency in you. They were being moved out of a field that could no longer accommodate their presence alongside your developing path. Their departure was not a judgment delivered by them. It was a structural inevitability generated by incompatibility. The longer they remained, the more interference would have been produced. The more interference, the more your line would have been obscured. the more obscured your line, the longer the delay before you could begin to read where your actual path was going. What felt like abandonment was, at the level of root mechanics, more like a dam being cleared, so water could move in the direction it was always supposed to flow. This is what the Arcturian field observers mean when they describe relational pruning. It is not punishment. It is not cruelty disguised as coincidence. It is the precise and often painful removal of relational weight that the next phase of your line cannot carry without losing coherence. A branch that is being prepared to bear something significant cannot simultaneously carry what it carried before. The load changes. The structure changes. What was once nourishing becomes, at a certain threshold, a draw on resources that are needed elsewhere, and what was once sustainable becomes, without any failure on anyone's part, incompatible with what is being prepared. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary sadness. It is the moment your path stops pretending that what fell away was meant to remain. If this transmission put language around a loneliness you have been carrying in silence, Chosen One Manifest, the protocol for selected souls, was created for this exact stage. It is not another message telling you that you are special. It is a direct protocol for those whose line has already begun to narrow, whose old circles no longer hold, and who need to understand what the separation is preparing them for. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Now let us go deeper into this, because recognition is the beginning, but it is not the whole map. The first thing to understand about the separation process is that it does not announce itself. It does not arrive with a clear signal that says, this is the phase where your path is being refined. It arrives looking exactly like your worst fear. It arrives looking like you are finally being confirmed as someone who cannot hold relationships, cannot belong anywhere, cannot sustain the kind of closeness that other people seem to maintain without effort. It arrives wearing the shape of the thing you have dreaded most. And because it wears that shape so precisely, the initial response is almost always to accept the costume as the truth. The disguise is nearly perfect. And this is by design, not by accident, because a separation process that announced itself would not produce the necessary conditions for what it is preparing. If you knew from the beginning that every loss was structural, you would not be forced to examine yourself at the level of depth that the refinement actually requires. You would watch departures with detachment, rather than excavating your interior in search of what needs to shift. The disguise ensures that you go inward, that you do not simply accept each departure as meaningless, that you engage with the question of what you are carrying and what you are becoming, and what, honestly, can no longer be part of that becoming. The pressure to explain why people keep leaving is itself a mechanism of the process. It drives examination that comfort would never produce. The pain is functional. It is not proof that you are broken. It is the mechanism by which the selection pressure produces genuine transformation rather than surface adjustment. Surface adjustment does not require loss. Genuine transformation does. And the depth of transformation the selected line demands cannot be reached through mild discomfort and incremental change. It requires the kind of pressure that only real loss generates, which is why the separation process uses loss, not because loss is desirable in itself, but because it is the only force strong enough to produce the internal reorganization that the next phase of the line requires. The second thing to understand is that the people who fall away during a separation phase are not failing you. This is perhaps the most important reframe in the entire transmission, because the resentment and confusion that builds around departure can become one of the most significant obstacles on a refining path. When you believe that someone left because they chose to abandon you, you build a story around that departure that positions you as discarded. And discarded people do not walk towards selected lines. They contract, they protect, they make themselves smaller in the hope that smallness will finally be acceptable enough to keep. They trade the forward movement of their path for the temporary relief of not experiencing another loss. And in doing so, they stall the very process that was attempting to move them somewhere. But if you understand that incompatibility is not betrayal, the entire emotional architecture of those departures changes. The person who could not stay was not failing you. They were reaching the limit of what your shared frequency could sustain once your line began to shift. They were, in their own way, responding to something they could not name, a change in you that made the old dynamic structurally unsustainable. Their departure, even if it felt chosen, even if it felt cruel, was in a deeper sense inevitable. And inevitable departure is not the same as abandonment. Abandonment is a choice made against you. Inevitable departure is a structural event that neither party fully controls. One says something about your value, the other says something about your route. The third thing to understand is about the environments. Not only people fall away during route refinement, entire contexts become suddenly, inexplicably incompatible. Places you used to inhabit easily begin to feel like rooms that are the wrong size. Ceilings too low, walls too close, the air somehow insufficient for what your lungs are now trying to do. Conversations you used to participate in without resistance begin to feel like they require you to compress yourself into a shape that you no longer fit, and the compression leaves a residue of quiet distress that lingers long after the conversation ends. Groups, communities, professional environments, even the physical spaces of your daily life can begin to generate a friction that you cannot fully explain, but cannot ignore. A persistent sense that you are in the right location on a map that no longer matches the terrain. This is not sensitivity disorder. This is not social anxiety manifesting as spiritual language. This is the field giving you consistent, legible feedback that the environments you are in no longer match the frequency of the line you are being moved along. When every room feels like the wrong room, the Arcturian interpretation is not that you are broken. It is that you have outgrown the map you were given for locating belonging. The map was accurate for where you were. It is no longer accurate for where you are being taken. The rooms have not become worse. Your line has simply moved past the coordinates where those rooms are located, and the discomfort is the navigation system registering the distance between where you are being asked to go and where your daily life is still positioned. That distance is not a problem to be solved by returning to what felt familiar. It is information. It is the field communicating through sensation what it cannot yet communicate through visible direction. The fourth thing to understand is what the Arcturian field observers identify as the silence before repositioning. There is a specific quality of isolation that arrives in the middle phase of a separation process that is unlike ordinary loneliness. Ordinary loneliness is the absence of people you want to be near. It has a shape and a remedy. You reach toward connection and the ache responds. This silence is different in kind, not just degree. It is the presence of a space that feels unfamiliar and structurally imposed, as if the path itself has cleared a corridor and you are standing inside it, unable to see either end, aware only that what was behind you has closed and what is ahead has not yet become visible. You may have felt this as a kind of suspension, not quite grief, not quite emptiness, but something between them that has no clean name in ordinary language. Social media may have felt hollow in a way it did not used to, the noise present, but the connection absent, as if you are watching other people communicate in a language that was recently yours, but has somehow become foreign. The relationships you do still hold may have felt somehow translated, reaching you through a medium that slightly distorts the signal, close but not quite landing. You may have found yourself unable to explain what you are moving through to anyone who has not felt something structurally similar, and the inability to explain it may have deepened the isolation, because unexplained experience, when it cannot be received, turns inward, and becomes invisible weight. The Arcturian field observers identify this suspended state as the corridor between line configurations. The old arrangement has been cleared, the new one has not yet cohered, and the space between them is genuinely empty in a way that feels like failure but functions as preparation. The silence is the gap the old line left when it was removed, and the new line has not yet filled. It is not permanent, but it cannot be shortened by reaching backward. A path cannot establish new coherence while still running the interference of the configuration it has already moved past. The fifth recognition is perhaps the most confronting. There is a version of self-rejection that operates beneath the surface of a separation phase that can do more damage than any external departure. It is the internalized verdict, the place where every relational loss gets absorbed not as information about the path, but as evidence about the self. Specifically, evidence of something fundamentally wrong with your construction, not a mistake you made, not a circumstance that unfolded badly due to timing or incompatibility. Something deeper, something at the level of what you essentially are, that makes you unsuitable for the depth of connection you actually need. This internalized verdict is the most significant obstacle the Arcturian separation process faces, because it is the one obstacle the field cannot remove from the outside. The field can root people away from your line with precision. It can close environments, thin the circle, reduce the route to only what can actually sustain the next configuration. But it cannot reach inside you and lift the story you have accepted as your own identity. That narrative, the one that says every departure confirms that you are fundamentally too much, too broken, too damaged, too unreachable for genuine belonging. That narrative is something the separation process cannot prune for you. It is the one pruning that requires your participation. Reinterpretation begins with a single internal shift, not a declaration performed over the pain, not a forced reframe that pretends the losses do not hurt. A single quiet pivot from "I keep being left because something is wrong with me" to "I keep experiencing departure because the line I am on is being refined." And refinement requires incompatible elements to be cleared. That pivot does not erase the grief, it relocates it. Instead of living inside your identity as proof of defect, it lives inside your path as evidence of movement. And those two locations produce entirely different futures. The sixth recognition is about direction, because all of this, the narrowing, the pruning, the silence, the environmental incompatibility, the confrontation with the internalized verdict, none of it is directionless. It is not loss for the sake of loss. The Arcturian field observers understand that a separation phase is not a destination. It is a passage, and passages, by definition, lead somewhere. The question the viewer is almost always asking from inside the corridor is not whether it leads somewhere, it is whether they can trust that without being able to see the destination. The difficulty is that direction is rarely visible from inside the corridor itself. When you are standing in the space between the old line and the new one, the forward path is typically obscured, not permanently, but for long enough that the temptation to turn back becomes significant. To reach toward what was removed, to try to reinstate the old dynamic, the former relationship, the environment that closed, not because it was right for the line, but because it was known. And known, even when insufficient, carries a specific comfort that the corridor does not. The Arcturian understanding is that this reaching back is one of the most common ways a refining path gets stalled. Not because returning to old configurations is a moral failure, but because the incompatibility that generated the separation does not resolve simply because the viewer returns to it. The field will generate the same friction again, the distance will re-emerge, the discomfort will return, and the viewer will find themselves back in the corridor, but this time carrying additional grief from the second departure layered on top of the first. The stall compounds, the delay extends, and the selected line which was waiting continues to wait. But the waiting has a cost, measured in time, that cannot be recovered. The selected line does not close immediately. The Arcturian transmission on this point is consistent. The path holds the corridor open for as long as the viewer needs to complete the reinterpretation. It is patient in a way that human relationships are not. But it is not infinitely patient, and the variable that determines how long the viewer remains in the corridor is almost always the same: how long they continue to read the passage as punishment before accepting it as preparation. What has been removed from your life was not removed to leave you empty. It was removed to create structural conditions for something the old configuration made impossible to approach. The people who fell away were not the destination. They were part of the architecture of a phase that is now complete. The environments that closed were not the ceiling of what you are permitted to inhabit. The circle that thinned was not the full measure of what connection can look like for someone whose line is being refined toward coordinates the old map did not contain. The Arcturians do not observe a person in a separation phase and read failure. They read active refinement. They read a line doing the necessary work of clearing interference so that what is being prepared can finally arrive with enough clarity to be recognized rather than missed. The losses are legible to them, not as verdicts, but as markers, evidence of a process advancing, a path narrowing toward its actual direction, a selected line becoming coherent enough to carry what it is being asked to carry. You are not in the aftermath of repeated rejection. You are inside a process that began before you had language for it, that has been operating with precision across every departure and every closing door, and every environment that stopped fitting. And that is not finished. The separation is still active. The refinement is still in motion. And the most important thing you can do right now is not reach backward toward what was cleared. It is allow the reinterpretation that has been offered here to begin doing the work that the field cannot do without your participation. The loneliness you feel is real. The grief is real. The exhaustion of explaining yourself into distance and watching closeness retreat despite your best effort, that is real, and it is not dismissed or minimized by this transmission. But the interpretation you have been applying to that real experience is not accurate, and an inaccurate interpretation of a real process is one of the most costly misreadings a path can sustain, because it generates responses, contraction, self-erasure, backward movement, that actively obstruct what the separation was preparing. You were not discarded, you were separated, and separation, in the Arcturian understanding, is not the opposite of being chosen. It is often the clearest visible sign of it. The line that is being refined is the line that carries something forward. Not every line is refined this way. Not every path requires this degree of clearing. The ones that do are the ones being prepared to carry something that ordinary traffic cannot sustain. Repeat this once, aloud or in silence. I was not discarded, I was separated, and the separation is not finished. Let that land. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this separation has already touched your life. It could be people falling away, the feeling of not belonging, repeated distance, unexplained isolation, or the sense that your old path no longer fits. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who feels alone, cut off, or misunderstood and cannot explain why. And if you are ready to understand the separation instead of blaming yourself, subscribe to Arcturian Chosen Path. You are recognizing a path already in motion, and this is only the beginning.